Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Rocket Chiro Podcast, the business and marketing podcast for chiropractors. My name's Jerry. I'm your host. Today, Shaq Smith joining me today to just chat a little bit. Thanks for hanging out, Shaq.
For sure. I appreciate you for having me on here again, man. Really do.
You know, I've been actually thinking about this for a while now about having people on that I enjoyed having a conversation with just to talk about whatever. I had this Dr. John Stenberg, which I think you know who he is, from Zenith Chiropractic in Colorado. Like I've had him on the podcast a few times, and he's the only other person I've had on where we just kind of talk about nothing. I'm not saying this is nothing, but it's a little bit different than an interview, and I do appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So I shared this article with you, and I thought we would talk about it on the podcast together. And it's about, I forget where I even saw it. It's Axios, and it doesn't look like they did the research.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this a company you're familiar with? Like, I'm not even familiar with Axios at all.
I'm not at all.
It looks like it's a firm called Edelman. And what they did was, and I wrote down a few things here. Over the last 12 months, they did an audit. It's 16,000 adults and it's 16 countries. So I don't know if it's 1,000 per country. I don't know how that breaks down, but their consensus is that people in general, and they specifically talk about Gen Z, but they were like, people in general have less trust for the medical establishment than they have in the past. And the way that they position this is they say that people have disregarded providers' medical advice in favor of other sources. And those sources are mentioned as family and friends, social media. Those were like two of the main sources that they mentioned. So basically the idea is that instead of people listening to their medical doctor, or maybe even the medical news or traditional, news, they're listening to family and friends and social media. And one person may say one thing and they say, oh, well, my friend said this, I'm going to do that instead. And the numbers have jumped quite a bit over the last 12 months. So that's kind of the gist of it. And as you looked at that, first of all, my thought is, are you surprised by that at all?
I'm actually not, if you want me to be honest with you.
I'm not surprised by it. They said that, so the age ranges they gave was 18 to 34 jumped about 13% as far as the distrust, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. There's about a 9% jump between the ages 35 and 54. And then there was a 9% jump between 55 and older. And so I have a couple thoughts as to why this might be happening. Because if we're talking about we're talking about between 2024 and 2025, this is post-COVID.
Yeah.
And I think the traditional media, and I think that medical doctors, a lot of them, not all of them, but I think a lot of them have really hurt themselves over the course of the 3-4 year kind of pandemic debacle. And I think that has led to this big spike in people saying, I don't know.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, it's funny that you're mentioning that just to kind of like put some of my stuff in there. My wife and I, we've kind of dialed back on that too. We're Gen Z. So, perfect example. We take medical advice with a grain of salt for sure now, just because of the things that have been, I want to be careful with this word, but I'm just going to say it, that have been proven that what we've been told medically doesn't necessarily add up or is accurate to the actual situation or what's going on. Not in all cases, right? I'm not saying for everything, but there have been some things that we've even noticed that it's like, but like I said, yeah, definitely a part of that group.
I think it's interesting that human beings in general think that medicine, and I say medicine, including all medical, alternative medicine and everything else, they think it is more proven than what it actually is. And it's interesting for me working with chiropractors that a lot of times chiropractors really are hard on themselves because it's like, well, they want some sort of double blind or they want some sort of test or study to prove chiropractic or prove what they do. Otherwise, they feel there's some level of insecurity about it. And as much as I'm in favor of doing as much as you can to find as much evidence, and I'm in favor of as much research about chiropractic as possible, I don't think that the medical profession is nearly as like we know exactly what we're doing all the time as what people think it is. And this to me is more of a revelation of that for a lot of people. And then on top of it, that the all of the pandemic stuff, there was this vein of distrust where it's not only that, oh, we made a mistake because we thought one thing and it turned out to be something else. Looking back, it's like, oh, you knew it was different. There's aspects of this that you knew were not correct and you told us otherwise. So there's two things there. There's one that, I mean, medical profession isn't as scientific as what we like to think it is. And number two, we thought, a lot of people thought, not me, I don't trust the mainstream media, but a lot of people thought that they could. This is my medical doctor. He cares about me. He would only tell me the truth. And there's a bunch of people saying things that aren't true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
So I think that I wrote down a couple things as far as like why this might be. The increase of information. So we live in an information world where there's, if you just go back and time, 15 years, the ability to find out stuff, like do your own research or whatever that is less than it is now. So the information is available. So the people choosing to do something besides what the man in the white coat says makes sense because you have more information available. AI has become prevalent. It's so interesting that it's so weird to think about. Maybe 10 years from now, we might live in a world where you're going to your computer and I don't know, is AI going to be prescribing? Is AI going to be like at least some things, like some level of things? And so we live in a world where we can like type into a computer and ask questions and get answers that didn't exist before. And then the other part of it is the cost of healthcare. So it's like the cost of healthcare has gone up. And now it's like that advice that I'm getting from the news or that advice that I'm getting from the man in the white coat or the woman in the white coat, if that's going to end up costing me an arm and a leg because someone who has bad insurance or, bad coverage or whatever, you can't afford to do it, then all of a sudden you're open to alternatives as well. So I don't think it's just the way that the COVID was handled. I think there's a lot of elements that go into this, but what we're seeing is this massive jump of people saying like, maybe I'll go in a different direction.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that makes sense too, especially if we're talking about Gen Z, because dude, like Gen Z, like us, I use AI every day.
Yeah.
I look up stuff every day. There was an incident that happened, literally this week. And before I booked a call with my urologist, I looked it up on ChatGPT. And I got very personal with it. I told it everything that was happening. And I was like, you know what? It could be this or this. So, the fact that you're saying that, yeah, like when it comes to us, I don't know. Do you use AI every day?
Yeah.
Okay. So it definitely, yes, that could definitely be another reason. Do you think that let me say this, if we're looking at it from like a ranking system type thing, do you think, okay, maybe number one is because of the information and then number two would be because of AI? Like what, you know what I mean? Like which one would you put on top of the other? Or do you think they all just work together?
Honestly, I think the pandemic accelerated everything.
Okay.
Because because I think what's happened is the information has been there for longer than before 2020. Not AI necessarily, but the information has been available. So we've lived in an information rich world for a very, very long time. Sure. And social media has been very prevalent for much longer than the last 4 or 5 years. So these things have been around. AI, not so much, but the information has been there if you wanted to dig and you wanted to look for it. To me, what has spurred it on is the fact that people are scorned. Like it's like being in a friendship or a relationship, and it's like someone lies to you or someone like you find out that they're being dishonest or they're potentially being harmful or they're doing stuff for themselves and it's putting you at risk. Like that undermining of trust, immediately now you start looking around saying, well, what can I trust? Like, where is my foundation? Like, what do I do? So I think that the way that all of that was handled, good, bad, or indifferent, has given people permission to now seek alternative points of view where they wouldn't have before. Now, there's always that demographic of people, and these tend to be chiropractic patients. So this is sort of the direction I want to go with this, as far as like talking like, what does this mean to chiropractors? There's always that demographic of people who just distrust. They have the like, sort of a natural distrust for the medical profession. They tend to be really good chiropractic patients because they're open to doing something besides what the man in the white coat says. And so I think that the way that the pandemic and all that stuff was handled probably just pushed more people into that category of saying like, well, let's see what else is out there.
That's true. I could see that.
Now, something I thought was actually interesting, and then we'll kind of get into this, how this affects to chiropractors, is at the end of this, it said, it was kind of like the and but at the end of the thing, where it's like, yeah, but, you know, this says all these people have taken this advice about friends. And I feel like this is like a kind of a CYA situation where they're trying to like, you know, we're not telling you should take the advice of your friends. And if you do, it's not on us. Like, it's sort of that sort of thing. But at the end of it, they said that nearly 60% of young adults said that they've made at least one healthcare decision they regret based on inaccurate or misleading information. Oh. Now, what's funny about this is that the way that that's presented, at least the way that I read it, is they're saying, hey, people have made these alternative decisions, but 60% of people have regretted it. I want to know, what do these people consider inaccurate or misleading information? Because a bunch of these people may be talking about the thing that spurred them to not listen to the medical doctor anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I listened to my medical doctor and he was giving me misleading or inaccurate information. I listened to the mainstream media and they were giving me misleading and you know, misinformed information or whatever. I think that's interesting because it's sort of like, you hear someone say that, you know, stats are like bikinis. They reveal some things, but not everything. Yeah. And so it's like, this doesn't really tell you, what exactly these people are thinking when they say this. Because if you were to ask me, like, have you ever regretted making a medical decision based on bad information, inaccurate information or whatever, I would say yes, but I wouldn't be talking about the alternative stuff that I did.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And when I'm reading this right now too, nearly 60% of young adults say that they've made at least one health decision they regret based on inaccurate, misleading information. It almost makes it seem like, hey, also too, don't listen to everybody on social media. Don't listen to your friends.
That's not bad advice. Like, it's like, listen, that's not bad advice. I take this as, since it is like the last statement on this article, I take that as they're just saying like, hey, look, a bunch of people don't listen to their medical doctor. A bunch of people don't listen to the mainstream, but some people regret it. And I kind of feel like it's just a cover in your backside sort of thing. But I would be curious. It's like, what are they thinking about when they answer that question? Because unless you get laser focused on the question, like what is the actual question that someone was asked and what were they thinking? You don't really know, because that changes drastically. When you do questions like this, or you ask somebody a question, and this is true for like consults, this is true for like lawyers, obviously know this better than probably anybody, is like there are very specific ways that you ask a question to get a very specific answer. And if the answer is very vague, then it's not super helpful. No. If you're trying to pick it apart anyway.
Right.
So what does this mean to chiropractors? So the reason I actually brought this up with you, and the reason I thought it would be interesting to talk about on the podcast, is because this was presented, when I saw this originally, it was presented with a bunch of chiropractors. It was in a chiropractic group, and it was presented almost like a bad thing. Like, oh my gosh, people just aren't going to trust us anymore. And that's not how I read this at all. Like, I just don't, because I haven't considered chiropractic ever. My entire career, I've never considered chiropractic part of the mainstream. And they like to pretend they are, and they like to think that they are, and they like to say they are, and like, we're going to be at the forefront of healthcare. No, you're not. And so it's like, if you're not that, this isn't about you.
Mm.
This isn't about them not trusting you. So the question now becomes, is this an opportunity for chiropractors? And then if it is an opportunity for chiropractors, how do we take this sort of hurt and kind of run away from the traditional way of doing things and turn it to our advantage? Like, to me, those are the questions that we should be asking, not like, oh my gosh, people aren't going to trust us anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, yeah, I've never considered it either, even though I'm not a chiropractor myself. Never considered it as being the forefront of medical, right? Um, if anything, like what you said, it is an opportunity for sure for chiropractors to make sure that they are doing what they can to build trust more than ever now. That's the thing too, is are you doing that? Right? So, because you can still fall in the line of not being trusted,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So, yeah.
And I think that's probably the a good starting point, is just helping. Like, you have to be aware of the fact as a chiropractor that a lot of people, because of what has happened over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of people are skeptical of the medical profession. And although I think that makes them open to going to a chiropractor where they maybe wouldn't before, it also makes them put you on a very short leash. And it's going to be very, very important that you speak very clearly, that you are very straightforward. Like, these cloak and dagger, like kind of deceptive, salesy things that some chiropractors have done over the years, these are not going to be your friend when you have people that are kind of walking around with a distrust. It's like the same thing that is going to open up the door for them to become your patient is going to shut that door really quick if you start
Oh,
smelling like that. If you start kind of resembling that thing that they're running away from.
oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And this is so random. I was running a Facebook ad. I just started doing Facebook ads. And the comments on Facebook are relentless when it comes to chiropractic. I mean, people are saying crazy stuff like, oh,
Yeah.
don't do this. You can have a stroke if you do this and all this other stuff. So me seeing that also kind of opened my eyes a little bit too, saying, wow, like, are chiropractors doing a good job of addressing this stuff too? Because now you have that, plus you have what's happened with COVID coming together, kind of, right? So I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that?
Um, I think it probably speaks to the different demographics. Like, you're an Instagram guy, like you that's like kind of your bread and butter. And it is interesting to see the different demographic of like how someone responds to an advertisement. Cause I've actually I mean, it's funny that you started doing Facebook ads, cause it's like, I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm just like Facebook is such a cesspool of maybe I shouldn't even say it's a cesspool. I'll tell you what I think is great for Facebook. I think groups are the one thing Facebook has that other social platforms don't really do as well.
Yeah.
And so, from a purely like a networking standpoint, if you were to think about it like, oh, this is there's a group for my neighborhood, there's a group for my town. There's like 2 or 3 towns near me, and there's like one for this group of towns and one for this group. And I'm sort of like in the middle of all of them. So it's kind of like you have these different groups. And I think it's a great way to kind of, if you just want to network, if you want to get your name out there, you want to help people, you want to offer advice, whatever that is, if you just want to get involved in your community, I think Facebook can do that. But the ad space, dude, I'm telling you, like, I know, like, I sound like I'm a million years old when you and I talk about this and you listen to me. I was doing Facebook ads. I think I had ads from like '08, maybe. I don't know when they started doing Facebook ads, but it was like I was one of the OGs first. Like, and they only did the sidebar ads. Like, you
Right.
couldn't do anything else. They were just little ads on the sidebar. And I started doing ads back then when I was still in practice, and they were great. Like, they were really great. There was a lot of like learning curve that involved with it, but
Mm,
it was really great. It was really awesome, and I loved it. But it's changed so
oh,
much.
yeah.
The interface has changed. It's made it the interface on Facebook, and we're totally getting sidetracked on this, but the interface on Facebook is starting to resemble more of the Google Ads. and it's structured and designed for ad companies and ad agencies, big businesses. Like it's sort of designed for that because that's where their money comes from, and they're not making tons of money from Joe Schmo chiropractor who's spending $400 a month or $300 a month on an ad. So, Facebook don't care about that.
No.
So they have everything designed and kind of set up, and it's just become more complicated, and it's been more hassle and less benefit over the last, however many years that is now. God, that's almost 20 years ago. That's what, 17 years ago?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm 100 years old.
Oh man.
So anyway, so here's my thoughts. I have a few thoughts about this, and you can kind of chime in and let me know what you think. But number one thought was, I think it's important for chiropractors position yourself as a trusted peer, not as a provider. When I came out of chiropractic college, there was this push to, and I don't mean not as a provider, like you're not an authority. I just mean you need to be an approachable authority. And there's different ways of doing that, because when I came out of chiropractic college, there was this big push to seem bigger than you were. So like, we're part of this Chiropractors of America group, and there's 7,000 of us. And like, there's this whole push of like, we're big, we're a big deal, we're important. And with social media, what has happened is everything's gotten small. Everything's gotten very personal. And so you don't have to be part of this big group. People probably prefer you're not. They want to get to know you as an individual. And so I think that we're kind of ripe for this. It's been this way for a while, but there's a couple of ways to do this. I put down like the way you speak, the way you dress, the office layout, even just the way the office looks. You can be very, very like corporate, or it can be very approachable. What are your kind of thoughts about that? Because I know like you see how chiropractors interact on social media and things of that nature. How important is like that approachability of the personality or of the brand of a chiropractor when it comes to stuff like this?
10 out of 10, it's important. I've noticed a difference between clients for sure. And here's the thing, like they have the same strategy. They run the same strategy. It's not the strategy. And it took me a while to figure that out. And when I really looked at it, it was literally what this point is talking about, being approachable, right? I'm going to just bring up one thing, right? And I know this might be a little bit off topic, but if you're going to have a profile picture of yourself, smile. So that's just like a little like thing that I noticed, just little things like that. But yeah, going into like language, the way you dress, things like that, I can tell a night and day difference between the clients that are successful and the clients that aren't successful with the strategy. The clients that are usually not successful with the strategy, it's, I want to say this carefully. They just seem very cold. Like there's no personality. There's no, right? So,
Yep.
And then with the other ones, they're like dressing up for Halloween and Christmas and doing that stuff for their content. Like they're dressed up as Santa Claus or something like that. Now, do you have to be like that? No. But I do think that there needs to be some level of personal touch, especially online, right? So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because when I did a deep dive into like the top chiropractors on Instagram, I was surprised to see the diversity of personality. I sort of expected kind of like that guy. It's like, and it turns out that like the most popular people aren't actually that guy. Like they're not like, there's a guy like out in California that's, I think it's, or no, maybe it's Florida. I don't know. There's a couple guys that have huge chiropractic followings on Instagram, and they just seem so approachable. Like it's like if you went in there for a first appointment, you'd be so comfortable because you already know this person, and they're not doing silly videos. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, if that's your personality, I think it's fine. I don't think you should do it if it's not your personality.
True.
And it's
right.
Because the point is authenticity. Like the point is like, because even within, and I'll kind of talk about something that I listen to all the time. Like I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. It's one of the bad decisions I made as a kid.
Yeah, that's
through my whole lifetime. And I listen to a particular Buffalo Bills podcast almost every day. Like it's a daily. That's 5 days a week. This guy's putting out content. And in a world where people like very energetic or very like do like kind of morning radio type of approach. This guy is super chill. He's very well thought out, like and I love his personality. Like I love his personality. I love his content. I love his information. I like religiously listen to it. And, but he's attracting me because I'm attracted to that. And that's sort of like what you're trying to do. The feel overall should be approachable. And I remember when I got out of school, like people would talk about like, should you wear a white coat? Cause people they listen to you. There's a study out there that talks about patient compliance. It has to do with wearing a white coat and not. And I don't know how relevant that is now with all this, take this into consideration, but there's that approach. I tell docs all the time that ask me like, what should I wear? My answer is something clean and something pressed. Like, I don't mean pressed like it has to be like, but just don't like, it shouldn't be wrinkled. Like it shouldn't look like you rolled out of bed.
Right.
So, but if it's a t-shirt, and I don't care if it's a hoodie, nice pair of jeans, some white sneakers, like I don't care. I don't care. Like there's a bunch of different ways of going about it. Just don't look like a hobo. Like don't look like you rolled out of bed. And you also don't have to look like you're the richest guy in town, because that's obnoxious. Like there's this guy, I'll send you the video. I'll send you because I'm not going to say who it is, but I got to send you this video. We're going to get so much enjoyment out of like just this guy who is just like, I actually just messaged one of my buddies the other day and I just sent him the guy's video. And that was my only comment was this guy, because like, he like dresses a certain way. He sort of looks like a caricature of like BJ Palmer and like whatever. It's just ridiculous.
Oh.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe it works. I don't know. Maybe it's a shtick. I don't get it. But it's not for me. Like, so I think that kind of the overall feel, like one of the kind of the big points here is just make sure you're approachable with how you're dressing, how you're speaking, how you're posting content, and you're being authentic. I think that's sort of my thought.
Yeah, for sure. Be yourself. Literally show yourself. Don't hide it. Don't be a robot.
And I'll tell you, this is the other thing. And I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, I still struggle being comfortable in my own skin. So I know some people are kind of naturally better at that than others. I'm more of an introverted personality, and I'm often very uncomfortable in my own skin, and I'm better at it now than I was when I was younger. But there is a certain level of just being, balancing that, trying to be your best self, trying to be genuine and authentic, and being comfortable with being flawed and not being perfect. Like it can be tough. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh, no big deal. Just say whatever you want, do whatever you want. Like, no, that's not it. It's just, you want to be approachable and likable and all of that stuff. But you also want to be genuine. So that's my thought.
Yeah.
So next thought was emphasizing a collaborative decision-making. This is something that I've said for a lot of years, where I've told chiropractors that being a chiropractor is a participation sport. Like you can't like force people. Like you could come up with this amazing care plan, amazing recommendations, and like just like they have to agree to it. And so it needs to be a collaborative effort. And I think a lot of chiropractors do a good job with this, but I think it's something we could probably do much better with, as far as like bringing our patients in, doing a better job of listening, doing a better job of making recommendations, and having those uncomfortable conversations about whether the person's going to do it or not. Because I think some chiropractors avoid the tension. They'll just be like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and I'll see you tomorrow. And they don't even bother asking the person if they're going to do it or not. And that person's leaving going, I ain't doing that. And the chiropractor's leaving going, see him tomorrow. And there's this disconnect. So I think that bringing the person in and making sure that they're not steering the ship.
Yeah.
But they're on the crew. You know what I mean? Like they're helping, because if there needs to be some part of that's in the chiropractic experience.
Yeah, I agree. This is actually something that I've learned, and I mean, I guess this can also just fall into the category of like sales, because that's just the way that I kind of look at it. You're there to guide people to make the best decision. not to force them, right? So when you say that, yeah, listen to what they're saying 100%. Ask them, hey, how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel like this is something that can help you? Because ultimately, like you said, if you just skip past all of that and you're like, oh yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. There's so many things going
Yeah.
on in their head, and you actually not only like you're not doing yourself a favor, but you're also not doing them a favor either by handling what's going on in their head about all of that, right? So that's the way that I like to think about it, is like it's collaborative. It's more of I want them to feel like they have some sort of control, right?
Yeah.
Like I want them to feel like that. So
There's, well, whether you like it or not, they do. Like, that's the thing you have to understand, is that like your clients can leave, your patients can leave.
mm,
Like they don't, this isn't prison.
yeah,
So whether you like it or not, they have a certain level of control. And I would argue quite a bit, right up to the point of leading, so whatever that is, 51-49, like you're always the leader. Like when you're you're taking on clients or you're taking on patients or whatever that is, it's your job to steer the ship.
mm,
But they can wreck it in a hot minute. And a lot of that is just because maybe you haven't had a good conversation, you haven't been clear about things, maybe you need to be better at selling, or maybe you need to be better at presenting yourself a little bit better. There's all kinds of reasons how you can improve those things.
sure.
I do think that it was a really, really wonderful place in my life personally when I got to the point where I unburdened myself with the decisions of others. And now that does not mean that I unburden myself with the responsibility to communicate clearly and to offer things that are of value and to do a good job and all of that stuff. But if I'm doing the best I can, I'm doing the best I can, I'm working on things, I'm trying to improve things, whatever, and that person says no, or that person walks away, or that person makes a different decision than I would make, I'm just not carrying that burden. Because it can be really heavy as a chiropractor when you are heartbroken because you can help someone and they choose not to let you do it. This is true for clients too, with you and I, like working with chiropractors. Like there's sometimes you have clients, you listen to them and you go, man, I can help this person. Like this
Yeah.
person is my person, and like, let's go.
Yeah.
And then they make a different decision, and it can be kind of frustrating because you're like, especially when they're like, yeah, I decided I had a friend that said that they could do this thing for me. And you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's
you know,
heartbreaking.
yeah. But it's like you have to unburden yourself with that because
Mm,
you like grown adults make grown adult decisions and they're not all the same. And
right.
so, um, but I think bringing people in on the process is important because if you don't do that, I think you're trying to run a dictatorship, and that's not the world we live in. Like I don't think it works well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And, it's as we're talking about this, I mean, this wasn't a chiropractor, but my recent PCP, right? The first visit that I saw him, he was talking about the things that was going, or I was talking to him about the things that was going on, et cetera, et cetera. And it was anxiety. And he said, usually doctors tell me, hey, well, we have, we're going to get you on this, we're going to put you on this. And then they sign everything off and then boom, you
Yeah.
go get the medicine. Well, this guy literally said, it's your choice. What do you want to do? Do you want to go with that? Because if you do, we could do that. And if not, then that's fine. I think that you're good. Just keep doing this, this, and this. He made it collaborative. I've stayed
Yeah.
with him since. Don't want to find anybody else. Right.
Yeah.
So when you do adapt being collaborative in the decision making, it actually makes the person, it attracts the person more to you, and they don't want to go see anybody else. Right. Even if they drop off, right, you're
Yeah.
still on the top of their mind, I feel. Right.
Yeah.
So,
One of the things I say all the time that real retention is maintaining the doctor-patient relationship for as long as possible.
mm,
And I don't mean as long as possible in one course of care. I mean, when you become their chiropractor, you stay their chiropractor. So we could argue how much you should and shouldn't use chiropractic and what you should and should use chiropractic for, and that people don't get it. Like all of that is fair discussion. But if someone's going to go to the chiropractor 5 times over the course of the rest of their life, I want them to come to me all 5 of those times. If I'm their guy, I'm the fit. And maybe I think they should come in 25 times. That's a different discussion. What I want to do is, I'm now your chiropractor. And the next time you decide to use a chiropractor, you're not checking Instagram, you're not checking Google, you're not asking AI. You got a chiropractor. Like, when the last time I searched for a chiropractor around me it's been like 20 some years, because I got a guy. Like, I don't need to see who's running a special. I don't need to see if I see an ad, I don't care. I don't pay any attention to it. I got my guy. And that's who you want to become. And whether they come once a year, once a month, once a week, like, that's a different conversation. But that sort of takes us into the next point, which is building trust online and offline. Yeah. And this sort of all starts to blend together a little bit, because we kind of talked about a lot of this stuff, but specifically the things I want to mention here that we haven't mentioned yet are things like reviews and testimonials. Reviews on Google are huge. Testimonials on like social media, that can be a really great add on with some of the other stuff that you're doing, like letting like that social proof of what you're doing. This stuff is really, really important in terms of like building trust, because you want to be constantly heading someone down the road of like, this is my guy. And then when you are their guy, you just want to be reinforcing that you're their guy and that you do good work. And that all can be done through social media and through some of these platforms.
Yes, especially with Gen Z and the younger generations, because what we tend to do is, before we decide to, well, not all the time, most of the time, we will go to someone's social media to see, hey, what are they about? And I'm just letting you know right now, if I hear about a restaurant, even if it's from a friend, right? If I go on that restaurant's Instagram and it looks like crap, I don't trust it. Yep. Right. But then again, too, right. Let's just touching up on that too. Yeah. Testimonials. Another thing that you have on here is behind the scenes, right? Like, that is huge. For an example, there's a client, Dr. Mike, the Combat Chiro. He posted a video because his mom is his front desk. Absolutely crazy. It's so cool. And he posted a video of him and his mom going back and forth, like mother and son relationship. Funny. Had nothing to do with booking, had nothing. But when I saw that, I was like, dude, like that, I wish every chiropractor did something to that extent. Now, obviously, if that doesn't fit your personality and that's something that you wouldn't do, then don't do that. But there's something that you could do to that degree to help build that trust, you know?
Yeah, it's, I would say I'll kind of give some quick tips here, and you can tell me if you have any additional thoughts. Reviews is a lot about, first of all, do good work, be consistent, make it easy. That's sort of my kind of formula. And it's just a lot of elbow grease at that point. Like, there's no sort of secret to it. There's tools you can use to make it easier, but it's do good work, be consistent about asking, and make it easy. So that's sort of my review thing. Testimonials, especially with video testimonials, the biggest thing that I would tell people is that, first of all, video is great. Pictures are great if you can't do a video, but I like the little signs where it's like, now I can do, I can now walk or whatever. I think those are kind of cool. But if you're going to do a video, what I would recommend doing is, for God's sake, edit the video. Like, two things. You and I talked about how much I hate editing, and it's like, listen, number one, for God, edit the video. Do not stick a camera in front of someone's face and ask them about their chiropractic story, and then it's like a 17-minute long video, and there's like 45 seconds of goodness in there, and you didn't bother editing it out. Oh. It's so terrible because nobody watches it. So just cut out So my 2 tips are: ask leading questions, because you know this person, you know their story. Ask leading questions that are going to get you that goodness. And when you get the goodness, edit it into like a 30 second, 60 second little hot, awesome clip. Like that would be my recommendations. Do you have any suggestions on the top? Because it drives me crazy. I see them all the time, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm like 2 minutes into this and this person hasn't said a darn thing, which is how people feel about my podcast. I realize. So I know I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah, I do.
Podcast is different though.
Yeah, it is. It is. I do have suggestions 100%. Follow this formula: before, after, and then do they recommend? That's it. So why did they come in before? What was their pain? What were they dealing with? And obviously you're going to do this with someone that you've been seeing for a while. What's the outcome? That's the only thing that people care about, right? It's the outcome usually. So if they can see, oh, this person was going through this and they got this result, and oh, they highly recommend, that's usually good enough, right? Yeah. So 3 questions literally, right, is, hey, can you tell us a little bit about what brought you in here? What was going on exactly? Okay. Hey, and can you tell us about how do you feel now? What are the results that you got? What are you able to do? Whatever it is. And then it's like, hey, would you recommend us? Yep. After they answer those questions, clip it up more, please, because they will have fluff in that a little bit. But yes, you definitely need to edit some stuff out, but follow a format, whether it's what I just gave you or what Jerry just gave you.
I'll also give you one of mine. Like I'll give you one of my sexy questions. And that is, what would you tell someone who's thinking about scheduling their first appointment?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because they'll talk directly to someone. They'll not only recommend you, but they'll tell the person, like, I wish I would have done this sooner. Like you need to, like you really need to do it. Like you're gonna get a strong recommendation if you just ask them, like, what would you tell someone who's thinking about scheduling their first appointment?
Wow.
So it's a good question. Those are what we call transformational reviews, like what you're talking about. So if this is, and we'll do this and then we'll kind of move on. Yeah. But if a chiropractor is asking for reviews, like automatically, like this person comes in for the first appointment and they get the text, it's like, how was your experience in our office? If you ask early, you get a lot of like, the doctor was nice, he listened to me, the staff was nice, the office was clean. Like those are the type of reviews you get. And on some level that they're helpful, but they're not great. They don't really move the needle from a decision-making process. Yeah. They can help your SEO because it's just the volume can sometimes help.
Right.
But the lack of richness to that review, the lack of good words that are in those reviews, and the lack of transformation from like, I was this way, now I'm that way, those are going to hurt you in the long run. So holding off just a little bit until you, whatever your process is, give the person a little bit of time to experience the benefits of your care before you go asking them for a review, because you want as many transformational reviews as possible. Like just from a Google standpoint. Now, people aren't going to do that on video. You're not going to have somebody come in for one visit and then stick a camera in their face. But yeah, but for Google, people do that where they actually way too quick. They're asking for a review and not giving the person a chance to experience it.
Can I add something really quick with that?
Yeah, sure.
And you do not have to literally set it up like as like, oh, like they have to stare into the camera and talk. You actually don't have to do that. Just literally have the camera set up to where they can at least see them talking, and ask them the questions like right after, like you talking to them, even if they're looking at you and not at the camera. The whole point is capturing their response, right? So don't make that more difficult than what it has to be, is what I'm saying. Right? Especially if you're a solo doc.
Well, the other cool thing about it, and the other cool thing about it too, is that when you post a few videos like this, there's a certain amount of momentum. People see those videos, and then when you ask them to do it 2 months from now, 3 months from now, like they're on board with it. Like they saw people do this. So there's a certain amount of like review and like even treatment videos, like when people are doing adjustments and stuff like that, it's super weird and awkward. I get it when you're first starting. And if you don't want to do it, I understand. I would never be the type of person that would do that. But if you decide to start, just understand it's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward. But once you start doing it and people start coming in because they saw you do it, they're not weird about the fact that you're recording them. Like they want to do it. Like a lot of them want to do it. Uh-huh. And so these things create momentum. And sometimes the hardest thing is getting started.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So last thing is this, and we'll kind of wrap this up, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I put on here that we should educate our patients about critical thinking. Patient education is a part of the chiropractic process. It just is. Whether you're an evidence-based chiropractor and you're doing mostly musculoskeletal, or you're a holistic chiropractor and you're doing nervous system or what, doesn't matter. People don't understand how their body works. Purely just from a time and healing and a mechanical standpoint, they do not understand how their body works. And so there's an element of education that is involved with being a chiropractor. Part of that should be helping the person think through these things. Anytime you're dictating to someone, and this sort of goes back to the original point, which is like, you're trying to be with them. You're trying to be a peer. You're trying to collaborate. You're trying to, so you know stuff that they don't know, but getting them to come to their own conclusion and their own understanding and helping them work through that thought process should be the kind of the structure and the bones of how you do the education. Because if you're just dictating to someone, and this is obviously like you and I, if you get on a call with someone and you're like trying to sell something or get somebody to sign up for your service, it's a little bit different because you don't have the time. But as a chiropractor, you're going to see this person 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 visits. There's a process that you can go through of helping someone understand what's going on and giving them the time and the space to sort of learn some of these things and figure out some of this stuff. So there's a little bit of a asking questions and helping someone think through and just teaching them to think critically. When someone says, like somebody comes to you and they say, oh, so-and-so said that chiropractors cause a stroke. Oh, wow. I've heard a lot of people say that. Like, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think about that? Like, well, such and such. Like, well, it's, you could bring up low insurance rates. You could bring up the fact that chiropractic is safe. You can bring up the anatomy part of the art. There's all kinds of discussions you could talk, but asking the person, like, what do you think? Like, oh, somebody comes and they say, well, my friend doesn't want to go to the chiropractor because they think that you're a bunch of quacks. Yeah. Well, what do you think about that? Like, why do you think they think that? Like, it's like, there can be a process of, why do you think you hurt your back sleeping?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I got out of bed and I hurt my back. Why do you think that is? Like, why, like, let's think through this a little bit. I could just tell you I have a crap back. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, you haven't taken care of your back in years. That could be, but there can be and I'm not saying you should always just ask, like, what do you think? Like, you're a therapist, but there should be some of that worked into what you're doing from a patient education standpoint, where you're teaching someone to be better equipped to make better decisions down the road.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And of course, like for me, because I'm online, I think of educating online. Would you think that would be a little bit different versus in person, right? Because,
Yeah.
right, like for instance, like if you're doing it online on Instagram, Facebook, would it be more of, it's kind of hard to do it in a way where it's like, hey, well, what do you think? Right? Like, would that be leaning more towards of you being a dictator or having like, right? Or
I'll tell you this, I'm not a fan of the peanut gallery.
okay.
So I don't ask the peanut gallery what they think, because the people who I want to talk to and have an intelligent conversation with aren't going to comment. And the stupid people that I don't want to hear from are going to chime in because they can't keep their mouths shut.
Yeah.
So
That's fair.
I don't particularly care for having conversations with the peanut gallery. And so I would agree with you that it is different online versus offline. Online, when you're doing education or doing information, it should be informative. When you're doing it in person, it should be a combination of informative and collaborative, where it's like you are bringing this person in because you're talking specifically about their issues and their problem, and you're trying to help them understand what's going on with them.
Right.
Like this is not about understanding everything, because when you're presenting information online, you're presenting it's like I showed you that stuff for that local SEO stuff. It's like, well, I can show you, we can talk about concepts, but I showed you a specific situation. Yeah. So it's like what a specific situation is and what happens in a specific situation can be very different than how I would present that as like a global thing. And even with like this podcast, like there's always going to be like in the membership that I have, like Next Step, there's a bunch of information in there. And I tell my clients, I said, when you go through the trainings, there's no possible way that I could give information that's going to apply to everyone 100%. So if you read something or you watch a video and you go through a training and you say, I like this, but my situation's different, or my situation, there's a little bit of this thing. Reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. And so, what you're talking about, what we're talking about is the difference between you generally educating people or specifically educating people. And when you're specifically educating someone, helping them, teaching them how to fish, it's that whole thing.
Right.
Teaching them how to fish should be a part of the specific education you're doing with individuals.
Yeah. And now that you said that, I think with Instagram being how unique it is with the messaging, you can tell people after you inform them on something or give information, say, hey, if you still have more questions, just reach out to me, DM me, and we'll talk about it.
Yep.
Right?
And that's where the conversation, the tone of conversation changes when you go into the DMs and now you're having a private conversation.
Yep. 100%.
So, and that's the point. And that should be the point. And that should be the point of Instagram in general. And you and I have talked about this on a different podcast, where it's like the point of it is interaction. So you do want to have those conversations, whether that's, in the comments, which I would consider that kind of a not as good of a level as a direct message, but you want to have conversations with people, because those conversations are going to lead to relationships, and those relationships are going to lead to clients and patients and people you can help.
Yes.
All right. I put a couple things. Bottom line, I said, great time to be a chiropractor because people who are skeptical of the medical establishment tend to be more open to chiropractic. Great time to be a chiropractor because you don't have to be a big corporation to be an authority. Great time to be a chiropractor because social media and online ads make it easy to reach people. And great time to be a patient-centered chiropractor who genuinely cares about people, because really that's what we're talking about. We're talking about caring about people. So
yeah.
Anything you want to throw in there before we wrap it up? Are we done?
No, I think we're good on that. I think this is very valuable, 100%. Of course, every podcast is, right?
Some more than others, let's be honest.
Oh, man.
All right, man. We're going to wrap this up. If you guys want help with your website or SEO, go to rocketchiro.com and request a new patient search review. I changed the word of that recently. That doesn't make it better. It just means it's a different name. I used to call it the practice assessment, and I do a new patient search review. My goal is to show you what your website and your SEO look like from a patient's perspective and give you some tips and advice on that. So if you would like that, go to Rocket Chiro, request a free review. I'll be happy to do that, whether you're a client or not. And if you want help with that goes beyond the podcast, with some trainings, business and marketing information, check out my Next Step program. I'll talk to you guys on the next episode. See ya.